There is a problem with The Crow. There have been many adaptations, and I think that most of them don't really capture what the comic is all about. The Crow is a supernatural fantasy about a man called Eric Draven who is brought back to life after his soon-to-be wife is killed by the hands of a group of gang members. The reason I say these adaptations fail is because yes, there is violence and gore, but the comic itself is not really about that. The comic is about the grief and the pain the character deals with, and the process it takes to overcome such tragedy. And honestly, most movies just rush past this. Plus, how are you gonna care about this story if you don't really care about the characters? In the most recent movie, the runtime is about an hour and 50 minutes, and in maybe 20 minutes of the story, we spend time with Eric and Shelby. And even then, all we see is them hanging out at parties, group gatherings, and having sex. It's like you're seeing a high school couple on the big screen. So whenever a tragedy happens, you don't feel anything, and the whole point of the story is lost, because now their revenge and the action scenes are meaningless, since the audience is disconnected. Another issue with the Crow movies is that a lot of the production companies think that people want to see things on a larger scale like the Avenger movies. This simply doesn't work with the Crow. In the world of the Crow, there is not a big bad evil guy that must be defeated. Everyone is simply human, where Eric just runs through people like they are nothing. Going back to the most recent movie, when you create an antagonist whose sole purpose is to be an obstacle to the main character, that is when you realize that the writing of the story is weak. To make a good antagonist, the character must have depth and a layered personality, not just black and white characteristics. It must resemble real people with flaws and imperfections. An antagonist must have motive. They need to be driven by something. They must present a conflict to the protagonist. And when it comes to the most recent depiction of the Crow, the bad guy just seems like a cardboard cutout that is just there for the sake to be there. Besides, including this supernatural antagonist in the story is simply just a mockery of the source material, and it ruins the whole purpose of the comics. Don't get me wrong, there are characters that are just bad, like in the Guardians of the Galaxy. The High Evolutionary is a comedic bad guy. He's simply bad just because he's bad, with no motive or anything. But he works as a villain because he's connected to the main character, and it makes sense why Rocket would want to confront him. But that's besides the point. If you want to watch a video about Guardians of the Galaxy, just let me know in the comments down below. Going back to The Crow, if you really want to enjoy the story of The Crow, just watch Brandon Lee's movie. It's literally the comic book panel put into the big screen. For example, as I mentioned before, the comic concentrates more on the grief and the struggle Eric goes through, and the movie is more action-packed and fast-paced. Other than these small changes, the movie stays true to the source material. If I were to create a Crow movie, I would literally do half of the movie just exploring the relationship Eric and Shelby have, and then the other half of the movie the revenge and the violence. Because then you have empathy for the character and you understand him. Something like John Wick. Because when you really think about it, The Crow is very similar to John Wick, and there is a reason why John Wick is a franchise. Overall, I think all the movies that were made after Brandon Lee's death just want to hold on to the hype and the nostalgia his movie had. And instead of writing a good story, the industry just wants to capitalize on the name. And even when it comes to the character, it's probably going to be really hard to overcome the success the original movie had. There have been many different Crows in the Crows universe, varying from Joshua Sane, Iris Shaw, Michael Corby, and many more. I know I keep complaining about the Crow's new movie, but the design of Eric is so far removed that seems ridiculous. It feels like a completely new character and attaching the name to it. At this point, I will use a different depiction of the character completely disconnected from Eric Draven, and then you can write a story that you want. But as long as the character continues to be named Eric Draven, it's never gonna surpass The Crow 1994. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.